Welcome to the Marble Sports Worldwide podcast, where we discuss your favorite marble sports. We bring you in-depth analysis of each event across many different marble sports competitions. Catch all the information and drama you want to hear about your favorite players, teams, events, and more right here on the MSW podcast.
Alright guys, hello everybody, and welcome to part 2 of episode 11. Still talking with the head of the JMRC, Melikus. For you guys, this is a full week later. For us, it's literally 10 minutes later, so it's really funny. But, you know, the magic of editing, right?
Yep.
But we are back, and... I'm sorry. It's hard to keep from laughing when I'm looking at the comments, the live comments, and trying to do this at the same time. So that was bad. But you know what? Keep it rolling. We are back with Melikus. Melikus, why don't you say hi to all the awesome listeners again?
Yeah, hey everyone, welcome back to part 2.
He is here. And Waf, why don't you say hi?
Hello guys. Sorry. Welcome back to part 2. Hopefully you're liking this format so far. Let's just try and get back into what we were discussing, I guess. We're gonna... yeah.
Waf's getting distracted by the comments, too. I feel that. But, yes, we wanted to devote most of this part to discussing something we were talking about in the previous episode with Hershey, which was the fan interaction and randomness aspect of marble sports and future marble sports competitions, and how... you know, it's integrated and what it even means. And I know it was a very deep conversation we had last time, so we want to go ahead and see what Melikus has to think on that whole topic and what we can really uncover here. So, I mean, I'm just going to go ahead and jump right into it. Melikus, I want you to tell me, I don't know where to start in this topic. It's a huge topic, so let's start somewhere. Melikus, what do you think? What do you think on this whole thing?
Yeah, I'd start with where we are right now in terms of fan interactions with JMR. I think from our point of view, we think that we're doing an okay job. So it's not great, but it's not too bad as well. Typically, we're doing a lot of polls on YouTube. You might remember them, like with the poll about should we bring back Hivalino, or do you want us to create a new tournament using Gravitrax stuff? And polls like that, we're doing them pretty often. Well, not too often, but for us it seems... like a lot, because we are letting the fans take sometimes major decisions for the channel. That's what we have right now. And of course the fan team contest, that's a thing that Brendan experienced too, firsthand. And
X camo.
No.
Yeah.
Ouch.
Yeah, about the fan team contest, it was a lot of fun, definitely. It boosted the community on Reddit and Discord, and it was just beautiful to see people inventing all those teams and coming up with background stories and inventing some drama sometimes with already existing themes. It was just interesting to see. But on the other hand, it was a lot to organize and a lot to keep track of, because we did not one but 2 votes, and the second one was preferential voting. So shout out to G, who helped me a lot with the votes and organizing that stuff. It really helped me a lot, and I have to admit that we didn't do everything perfectly. But it was our first time, and we are going to learn from the mistakes, because we are willing to bring that back, not necessarily for the Marble Olympics, because we have a certain pool of teams that we want to keep for some years now, because we'd love to see that relegation system with the showdown qualifiers and the main tournament. We'd love to see some dynamics there, some teams moving up and down, and not being changed or retired immediately and replaced by newer teams. So I think the door to the Marble Olympics in terms of fan teams is closed for now, but we have a lot of other tournaments as well, like the Gravitrax, which is quite new. We still haven't decided on any team names, so I think it's a good possibility to include the fans here. Well, maybe not for team names, but at least for team member names, like naming the individual athletes. That's something
definitely.
We also did in the past, like when a new team got introduced. I think we did it for the Green Ducks, if I remember correctly. And we occasionally renamed some other athletes, and we always try to include our fans. Yeah, that's the point where I think we stand currently.
And I'll cut in here, and I really do, and I mentioned this in part one, how I want to discuss this a little more. I think it kind of goes along with the topic we're discussing. I do like Marble Showdown. I do like what it's bringing to the Marble Olympics, and I think it in some ways leaves more room and more sensible room to add new teams. And here's why: you have that bottom 12 teams that didn't even, that's not even in the qualifiers yet, and so like they're going to compete. So you're going to have and then as you let that settle a couple of years, and you have teams that move from Showdown up to the qualifiers and then back down and a bunch of stuff, you're going to get teams who also don't win in Showdown, of course, like that bottom four that you'll create this year. And like in the future, when you have that bottom four, you can almost justifiably switch them out for other teams, because it's not just they didn't qualify, so now they're game to be switched out, but it's like they didn't qualify and they failed in the B League, and that's now a super small group of teams. I think at this point only 4 teams that both didn't qualify for normal Marble Olympics and didn't qualify or in the Marble Showdown competition. So you have such a small group of teams down there that you can justifiably switch them in and out with other teams. You can retire a team if it's been down there a long time. You can say that team move down into lower leagues or whatever, and like you have an open door to easily and sensibly bring in new teams, later in the future, maybe in 1 or 2 years.
I agree to that.
Because of Showdown.
Yeah, in 1 or 2 years maybe, but it's not like a thing that we would repeat every year for the Marble Olympics, at least, because we just want to keep that certain pool of teams that we have at the moment, and we don't know how the Showdown will turn out. We don't know what teams will be at the bottom 4, but it looks like we are going to send those bottom 4s to just the next Showdown and just see how it develops. We're just curious to see how it all works out, if it works out at all. But we don't want to interfere with it at the moment too much by adding a lot of new teams every year.
Right. Yeah, I do agree with that, and with all the other competitions you have going on, Gravitrax and San Marble Rally and all that, definitely leaves room for fans to interact in that way.
Yeah, exactly.
In the last episode, and Mr. Waff, you can probably speak to this a little bit, we did talk about the difference in reception between the Hubelino Maze Race and the Dirt Race, which, both featured many DNFs in a sense, as a lot of marbles did not ever get to the final finish line. And you know, the Hubelino Maze race wasn't received as nearly as well by the community as the dirt race was, and we had gone into, and Mr. Waff, you probably remember this, we gone into that conversation on that element of chaos to events in the Marble Olympics, how that kind of excites people more than you know, than not chaos, I guess.
Right.
And it's and so I ask, what do you think about that? And like through all the times being in the Marble Olympics, and you see a lot more stats or know a lot more things than we do about the channel. Do you think that those events that seem to have more chaos seem to always excite the fans more, and why do you think so?
Yeah, first of all, I agree to that aspect, and I found that chaos discussion very interesting. I think that was probably my most favorite part of the last, episode 10 when Hershey was on.
Right, yeah.
And what's most interesting is, to me, when Hershey said or tried to explain why the maze event wasn't quite as well received as the marble rally event or the dirt race event in the forest. And he mentioned that track failure, or that those different segments of blocks connected together, and with that gap in between them, that tiny gap that's natural because those blocks are not one but different segments just put next to each other. It just seems like it's something that's not natural. It's not a natural element of chaos. Like in rafting, there was the vegetation that added a lot. And in dirt race, there are other obstacles that weren't placed by us. Not all of them. Some were... if a leaf falls down from a tree and a marble hits it, or I don't know how much of an impact a leaf
yeah.
For a marble, it could
leave.
have a lot.
Depending on the size.
But that's just the difference. I think that is most important here. Human-made elements or human-made mistakes, like those different segments not perfectly connected, and natural elements that create chaos. And I think it's very important to have those. They create excitement, they support that randomness and that uncertain outcome. You never know what happens, and that's just beautiful. You sit there and watch it, and you may have some expectations when you're rooting for your favorite team, but with those elements of chaos, you never know what happens, and of course that creates excitement, and we realize that. But the challenge is to make those elements of chaos seem natural, and not to make them seem too much like obstacles that interfere with the outcome of the event. Every marble has to pass that gap between those two segments, but if your favorite team gets stuck there, of course you will say it's a track failure, the event is not fair, and you're rigging it. In worst case, we had a lot of rigging allegations this year. So I think chaos is important. It's important to create chaos, but what's even more important is to create it naturally, to use natural elements, and to hide it, not to show that we are intentionally creating chaos, but to make it seem like it's happening on its own. I think that's the true art of making a good marble competition.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we talked about this in my first episode, with the it was the relay race, how the barriers seemed so low and so thin that it actually enabled marbles to touch each other, and also for the podiums that they were on for transitioning were easily able to bounce over or fall into other tracks. And we had a discussion about whether or not that may have been an intentional designed choice to encourage more chaotic results in the race. And we debated whether or not that was something that should be allowed to happen or not, because it felt more like I guess, fabricated and unrealistic for how an actual sporting event would be.
Right, and yeah, and I mean, I don't know if that was intentionally, done, and you can speak to that in a moment. But I'm just thinking here back to what we discussed. Now, the little more I know about how people's favorite events lined up. I mean, just Collision. Take Collision as the number one favorite event in the Marble Olympics. That is the most chaotic event.
I think dirt race. I thought dirt race was more chaotic, but like it was definitely a good second.
Right. But like consider those events and like Collision. The marbles come down, they smack into each other. That's chaos. You have no idea where those marbles are gonna go. You can create the same situation every single time. The ball bearings always start in the same place on that event. The marbles always start in the same place on that event. Maybe they use a different formation that Greg Woods had mentioned, but they always start in the same place. Everything's always in the same place to start, but there's a completely different outcome every time. And I think that's why Collision is the favorite event, because no matter how many times you set up that same Collision event, you are going to get a different outcome every time. And the thing about the Hubelino Maze race, that even though you would think, oh, that's very chaotic because marbles may not finish, marbles are all smacking into each other, people kind of feel like it wasn't just absolute chaos, like a free space for marbles to randomly roll. It was almost like a designated track, and the chaos was forced, as you were saying, Melikis, because the narrow gap, and they just kept going back and forth. Kind of like a worse version of the half pipe. I remember when you guys did the half pipe, and I actually did kind of enjoy that because the marbles would never really get stuck. It would just be which way they would end up falling down. But like the Hubelino Maze, it's kind of like, okay, if a marble just happens to momentum to run out and it will not be right in front of the gap, then it's just not going to go through. And it's almost like, okay, well, the track is set up like that, and and when the marbles kind of bump into each other, it doesn't really keep them moving. Sometimes they all just get bunched up, as opposed to you take the dirt race and Collision, which are just natural chaos. Though like 7-8 marbles DNFs in the dirt race, people love that because it's totally not even planned, not even made like that. And even I'll even go as far as to take rafting. You look at rafting, and the event was very well done, and the rafts were awesome. But you also look at that aspect of that vegetation at the end. And I know it became sort of a meme, but just the fact that it was natural. It wasn't like you guys put a little block at the end that things could get caught on. It was like there was just happened to be vegetation, and it was almost like Greg Woods was confused as why it was there. But it was like he know what I'm saying? And he did a great job commentating through it, and it was like everyone, you almost had more excitement during the race because you're like, okay, this raft right here, this the Green Ducks, whoever, are doing so great. They're fast. They actually could beat the record. But you had this little thing of like, oh, what's going to happen when we get down to that vegetation, this unknown, obstacle, this natural obstacle? What's going to happen? It could ruin a whole marble's time, and it did actually ruin a couple marbles' times. It just the reason, the chaos that natural chaos, I think, is what creates a really good event. And I would like to ask, where did the dirt race place on favorite event?
I'll look it up real quick.
I guess another point about the Hubelino Maze race is like there's also designated places on the track where like a marble could get pushed off of it. And so, like,
right,
that was also probably another point. People were like, it's controlled chaos. It's an intentional place where marbles are capable of falling off because the track was designed to do that.
The dirt race
right.
is
on
place 10.
That. Oh,
place
so that
10
actually
on the
lower than I thought.
vote.
But
yeah.
it does. I think it does. I think this discussion on chaos does speak to the fact of why Collision is where it is. That you just don't know. I can run marbles against each other 100 times, and every single time I'm going to get a different outcome. They're going to end up in different places. They're going to hit different ball bearings in different orders. It won't happen the same way. And I think
that's the beauty of it.
Right, and I think when it comes to that randomness, where it's like no matter what you do, it's not going to be predicted beforehand. That's what makes a really good event. Um, yeah, the topic I really like to delve into. But you guys have any more thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's important to say that, of course, that chaos theory we're talking about here, it's one of the more important parts of what makes a good event. But there are other factors as well, like you said with surfing. What was the big problem of surfing? It wasn't that the event wasn't progressive enough or that we didn't invent something new there. It was the scoring system itself, I'd say. It was just too complicated. And yeah, it was one of those events that you really didn't knew what team is going to win. Even if the Savage Speeders finish first, it might be that the other team wins that race because of the surfing bonus or distance bonus, and then it gets counted together and some magic happens and the outcome is different than you expected. So that's something that we made not too good experiences with, and we'll certainly try to avoid that in the future. Yeah, so simplicity is another very important point here.
Yeah, yeah, right. I'm sorry if you guys heard any background noise, by the way. I'm sorry about that. Did you guys hear anything?
I think I heard a little bit, but nothing too
Yeah,
bad.
nothing too bad. Okay, good. Yeah, that definitely is a good point. Go ahead, Mr. Waff. Sorry.
So something that for about the whole fan interaction thing. So as I'm pretty sure most of our viewers know, if you've been keeping up with MSPN's news, they have just as we talked about in Hershey's episode, he is doing a community coach thing where members of the can come together in the community and they can actually vote on where they want to put a certain marble. So they have these members called the metal marble, where they're like a special marble that naturally is like a bit bigger and weighs more. And so for certain events, like he's gonna ask the coaches where they want to put the marble in the lineup, if at all, if they're even gonna be in an event, and like to have the fans kind of control how the events would go. And for Marble Olympics, obviously there's no special marble or anything like that, but like, would there be anything like maybe where the fans or maybe designated coaches could vote on like which member to do, like what order for, like, say a relay race, like which member goes where, or maybe for them to vote on like what member participates in a solo event, perhaps?
Yeah, that's a question I was kind of wondering at some point too. Like, do you think Marble Olympics will ever have that, coaches deciding things for teams, placements, and who to pick for each event? And if not, why do you think not?
I definitely think that it's a very beautiful aspect here that Hershey created and introduced to this whole marble sports world, because I don't think it has happened before. I know in to the Algudu races, or however it's pronounced, there were like votes for what contestant to kick out for the next round.
I remember those
that's
days.
where I think these were the early days of fan interactions, and with that concept that Hershey created with the fan coaches, I think it's brilliant to have a designated group of people who are really invested into a certain team and taking decisions. That's something I hope it works really well, and I hope that it's or that it will bring new dynamics to the M Games. Now to your question, whether we'll bring it to the Marble Olympics. Well, it's certainly something that we'd love to have, but the question is, how are we supposed to do it? Are we going to have a closed group of people taking all decisions for whole teams with a fan base of sometimes hundreds well, tens of thousands of people, or will it be all fans of the team? And if it's going to be all fans of a team, how are we going to differentiate if you're truly a fan of the team, and how are we going to prevent manipulation or something? So it's so complicated with our fan base. Now I'm afraid that we just can't do it like that, because it's so big. Sometimes we forget how huge our fan base is. that can be fatal sometimes. But as I said before, fan interaction is important, and we are certainly looking into improving there. And in my preparation for this podcast this morning, I was thinking about this question in particular because I'm so blown away by this idea of having fans taking the coach's role and taking active decisions for events like where to place the special member of a team and discussing.
It would be awesome.
Yeah. And I was thinking of how could we incorporate something like that into the Marble Olympics. What I can say here is that I don't think that community coaches is something that would or will ever happen in our community, just because we don't want to limit it to a certain group of people. If we are going to allow the fans taking decisions, I think we would prefer just using those YouTube in-video polls, like YouTubers do. Do you like this video? Yes, no, and then you see how many people like the video, or something.
Well,
and I thought about something like when there's a situation like with Momo and his incident when he got badly injured.
Right.
After a certain amount of time, it was clear that he recovers and that there is a possibility that he might compete again. Now, I think it would be a suitable potential for fan interaction to ask the fans if they want to see Momo compete again, or would they prefer to use the spare member of Team Momo? And that could be done easily in an in-video vote of that YouTube video, and that would be a perfect fan interaction. So that's something that I thought about, and I think that could actually work with our community and the way the Marble Olympics work.
I guess one downside to that is like because some of the events are like mostly, if not always, pre-recorded. Like you couldn't have them voting for like where you want a team member to be placed in the track or for the next event or something like that, because the event would already be recorded, and so you couldn't really make a change.
Right?
Yeah, we would ask that question like two videos before the actual event happens, so we have time to record it and to respect the decision. We would set a deadline like you have 24 hours to answer it, and we'll respect the results after 24 hours, because then we have to record the event, and yeah, that's right, we are limited kind of.
And I guess another downside of that is like, they can't make a decision based off what the next event will be. So like maybe they would have changed their vote based on how one of the marbles they voted for performed in the event prior to the one that they voted for, and so there are definitely some limitations to doing it with the YouTube style of doing it.
Okay, let me try to get out my huge vision on this, because I think it's possible. It's just not easy, because like you said, there's obstacles with recording in the way of that ever becoming a thing. There's obstacles with the fans. Like, you're right. I mean, like, I didn't even think about it, but like, what if there was a big rival? God, I can't say the word rival. Say it for me. But what if there's a big rivalry between a couple teams? Like, just pick random ones, Jungle Jumpers and I don't know, Rangers or whatever. And you put the polls out for all the fans to do, and then all the Jungle Jumpers are like, oh, vote a bad one or a certain one for Rangers to try to make. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're right. That stuff could happen. You have to be careful with that. But and there's obstacles with the YouTubing, like I just said. But I think the vision I would have for this would be I don't know, whenever, in many years or whatever, have like a coach for each team, a coach that, a single coach or a group of coaches that was not just picked randomly, but kind of voted in. Like, I don't know, maybe have a whole video dedicated to all the fans who watch, like, looking at a bunch of applications for the teams and picking the one they want as a coach. You know, and it'd be a long process, like an overtime process, but you could do that, because then you have the fans pick the coach, and then the coach makes a single decision, just kind of like in real sports. In real sports, if you're a fan of a team, you don't get to make decisions for that team. You get to watch the coach do it. So I mean, like, it's not like, I know you want that huge community fan interaction, but there is that open thing that, like, if you really want to be interacting, well, you can apply to be a coach, and if your application goes through, then you get to choose. And if the application are chosen by the fans, then that increases the fan interaction, but decreases that risk of problems with teams, fans purposely voting down other teams and things like that. And then probably the biggest, sorry, I hate to cut in one more time, but probably the biggest problem, or the biggest thing that would take time to overcome, would be the production speed, or the production thing, because you're right. I mean, coaches will want to make decisions based on the previous event, so either the events would have to have longer times between them, or I don't know, somehow you guys get super speedy even more than you guys are doing, because you guys are working very hard at making the events that the coaches could choose right after the event. But I think with a good method, coaches could work. I mean, obviously there's a lot to go into that, a lot of complicated things, and it won't be resolved in one podcast or even 1 year, but I think it could be possible with good kind of a good set way, like how to go about it. Like I was saying, like applications and fans choosing the coaches, and the coaches make the decisions, things like that.
And there's one more problem, I guess, like with the whole YouTube poll thing, is because, so let's say that you're voting for, like, which member do you want to do the a slalom race, for instance. So you had to pick one marble. Not only would that result in a lot of polls in just one video, which could be quite excessive, it also would result in people like who don't like the other team. They'll vote for the marble that they don't want to race, just to mess with the other team. And so, like, by having an open poll like that, you open it up to people who want to sabotage the others.
Interesting. Another thing is that not everyone in this community really knows all stats. We should keep that in mind when we discuss things like this. And I guess think about it. I mean, out of all the people that watch this, there's only a small group compared to the amount that watch that actually know at least even their favorite team stats, even like that. Okay, this like for Nova Wolf's case, like he knows Starry always does great with Sand Marble Rally, so he would be a good coach because he would know to choose Starry with Sand Marble. But if you just took a random Galactic fan, they would kind of almost choose at random, like you guys might do in some way, because they don't even know those stats. So it's like I mean, the fan interaction with the whole community is great, but it might be the whole community might be happy if they just have singular human coaches that do know more about each at the teams, and it actually is quite a complicated discussion, Melicus, and I know it would be a lot to work through in your situation, but I think it would you'd have to consider the whole situation here, that like a lot of fans aren't going to know a lot about each team.
Yeah, definitely. But here's the thing. I'm questioning myself. Is it really worth it to give up the control? Well, currently the fans don't have too much control over the teams. But would it be fair to trust the control of a team to one single member of the community?
That is a good point to make. I think you heard someone calling Brendan's attention, so he might not be able to answer right now. But I think that is a good point. Like you're giving too much attention or too much power to one member, and
yeah, exactly.
It's kind of like unlike the it's similar to the U.S. politics. Just for an example here, the reason why that it's able to work is because we have different houses to check and balance one another. So even though there's one president, there's still the House representatives, and then who keep him in check, and then the judiciary who interpret the laws he makes. So you need to have different houses or something like that, like in the marble coaching area to keep each other in check, which would be very hard to figure out and probably way too complicated than it's actually worth. And so I can definitely see why you would be apprehensive about giving just one person all the power.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
exactly
that's
the
true.
thing. If you want it to work, you have to have some kind of system behind it, because giving up the power to only one person, that would just suck. If you have like something that we have in politics, that would suck too, because it's a lot to manage, and you have to keep in mind that we would have to do it for 16 or even more teams. And
Right.
to be honest with you, we just don't have the capacity and the time for that. And I also don't think that we don't have the nerves for that, because we have to concentrate on delivering the videos on time. We have to ensure the quality is like you're used to, or getting better constantly. We have to ensure that everything runs smoothly, that everything is fair. And I think that just community coaches is something that can't really work in such a big community like we have. I wish it could, but at the moment I just don't see any way for that to
No,
work.
at the moment, I agree. I don't think there's a way now for it to work. I mean, I am hopeful for it though, because I do see. I mean, indies just realize all of this has happened in 4 years. All where we are
Yeah.
now, from where we are at the beginning, only 4 years. So what we can see in the next 4 years or the next decade, as far as Marvel Stones goes, I mean, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. Things will have to be worked out, and so on and so forth. But I mean, I think it's possible. It's just something that it's a little bit difficult now.
And it's still a new
Now-
idea right now. Like it's still we haven't gone through a whole season of Endgames to truly see how it works out. So it's still a new concept.
And that'll be fun to talk about, like kind of the progression of the picking and what the coaches,
Especially
will
since
do.
we're both coaches. You're a coach for Whiteouts and I'm a coach for Telescopic, so we can have some inside information of how like it all went down and like how it's working. You know.
Yeah, and we'll report back to president of JMRC on our findings. But
Interesting fact here, I'm actually a community coach for M Games too.
Oh really?
I was so
No
I was so
way.
fascinated by the whole concept that Hershey offered me to take a coaching position.
Oh cool.
And yeah, I couldn't resist because I was so fascinated by that whole system. Yeah.
I'm
Wait.
curious. How are the marbles like picked now? Like for also like how do you pick the marbles for the order for relay races, or like picking a marble for like solo races? Like is it just random, or is there actually and if it's random, like who makes the decisions? Like is it like a group of people, or is it just one individual like Yell?
Yeah, it's in fact Yale taking that decision, but we want to bring up to in the JMRC we are discussing it constantly, and we want to bring it up for 2020 and to support Yale in keeping a consistency in what members to use for what disciplines, because it's known over the course of history of you said fans know statistics, and that's certainly true. Many fans know that a certain member of a certain team is good at a particular event, like gosh, I don't want to say anything wrong, but I think that Starry from Team Galactic is really good at speed events, right?
yes,
I believe
it is
so.
Sorry.
Yeah. For example, and we want to support Yale in keeping the oversight and to encourage him, or to support him in using the actual not the actual marble, but that particular marble, what is associated by the fans with a certain event, like to actually use the strengths of a marble. I don't think it would go as far as measuring skills of a marble or determining certain stats. That's an idea that's interesting for sure, but I don't think that's something we are going to do for 2020 at least. But our goal is of the JMRC, which I am representing. Well,
you are the JMRC. You are the whole thing. With everyone
nah, that's
else.
not true. I'm
I
I'm
know.
just the idiot at the top.
That's
Our
good.
goal is it to push forward for some consistency in what team members get used in what events. That's the goal we have currently. And I don't know how Jelle picks the marbles in particular, but he does it himself at the moment. We don't really have any influence there. But we also choose to not take any influence at the moment because I think we could, but that would probably annoy Jelle and give us less influence in the end, and I don't think that's worth it.
I think people also should understand, I'm sure you'd agree with me in this, Melikis, but a lot of these ideas like fan interaction and stuff are great, and like you said, you probably would love to see those in the community as well, but we have to remember the Marble Olympics is not easy to make, and with us only being a few years into this whole production, it's not like second nature yet. So they're still working through a lot of problems. They're meeting new ones every time. They're trying to improve just the whole content itself every time, let alone branch out into these extra things. And it's like, you know, you hear an idea like that, like fan interaction, and it sounds great. You're like, whoa, fans choosing where these marbles, actually getting to make a decision that could affect the whole competition. But then when you actually consider like how much extra time and difficulty that would be, I understand why it can't play out now, even though it seems like a great idea. It's just there's no ability for that. There's so much going on. Like you said, like you don't even have time to even ask Gel what he wants to choose for the marbles. It's just because it's so busy making this whole thing, and you gotta wait for it to be figured out and Marble Olympics to become something that you guys can make easier or quicker without as big as a hassle, or whatever it takes, more organized or whatever. I'm not saying you're not organized, but it's more just you gotta handle one thing before you handle a whole new world of other humans being involved in it. And
absolutely agreed. Yeah.
And like I said, sounds like a great idea. Can't be executed at the moment. I mean, MarbleCon 2020 sounds like a great idea. That sounds like an amazing idea.
Not 2020. I think that's a few more years off than that.
Right, but that sounds like an amazing idea. That's what I'm saying. But we're not doing a MarbleCon 2020 because you have already all you can do to get Marble Olympics 2020 out. So you see the difficulty there is not it's a bad idea. The difficulty is it's not a time-efficient idea, not an idea that we're going to be able to execute along with all the other stuff we do already. Just like, I mean, even to scale it down, maybe for a better analogy, just think about the podcast. I didn't come out first episode on this podcast with a co-host, with editing, audio amazingly. Well, I don't think I do that great, but you get the idea. With a new mic, with a new segment and an intro. I didn't come out episode 1 doing that. Doesn't mean it was a bad idea. Definitely wasn't a bad idea to have an intro or a new segment. It doesn't mean that I couldn't do it. It just means it takes time for me to handle each step of the process before I'd be able to handle something like that. This idea is great. It might take a few years before that kind of world of fan interaction can be even handled by the people that make it, and I hope you guys would agree with me on that point. But yeah, some ideas just you got to wait for them to really I had the word and it just went away, like manufacture, it takes time.
Yeah, so part 2 has been mostly about the fan interaction and randomness, so I definitely want to try and move on to something else before we have to end this episode. But before we move on to something else, there is one question that me and Brendan had way back in our first episode that I feel like we can finally get an answer to. So we wanted to know who makes the decisions for when a error occurs in the track that it's an intentional obstruction, like with the Midnight Wisps against the I believe it was the Raspberry Racers, and when it's just a failure of the track. Like, is there like a designated ref member of the JMRC, or like was this a collective decision made by everybody?
I think for clarity, you'd have to provide the exact example of what happened.
So it was
in both cases you're referring to, just so it's clear to everyone, because I'm not quite sure where the difference is.
Like talking
cases.
about, I believe it was Relay Race, Marble Olympics 2019. We had Midnight Wisps, we had Raspberry Racers, and apparently the Midnight Wisps knocked their starting block into the Raspberry Racers, and they called it a disruption they called it an actual interference, and they disqualified the Midnight Wisps. And we had a whole good discussion on. I thought it was not actually a real interruption. That was a whole awesome discussion. But the point, the question I think here is, Mr. Waff had phrased it well. Who decides that? Who watches that video or sees it happen and is like, okay, that little bit of mistake by the Midnight Wisps, we're going to call that an interference and actually disqualify them, and stuff. Who makes that? Who decides that?
Okay. Well, normally those kind of decisions would be taken by the complete JMRC, and by protocol we would have to present different options and then have a vote, including Yale, and if Dion is free, him too, and possibly Greg, because he has a lot of expertise in that kind of stuff, because he comments it all the time. Normally, we would take that decision together with the JMRC. So, it's a decision that would be made by all of us. The special thing this year was the betting that was introduced, and like the partnership with BetShares, and that was
very cool, by the way. That's awesome.
Yeah, we were required to introduce live streams as well, and we were also required to change the way the events are being corrected, because we had to keep the results of the events a secret until the event airs on YouTube, to not possibly interfere or leak any results to the betting platform, so that someone could have a possible advantage of that and win a lot of money, but not in a clean way, but using that insider information. That's why that group of people watching and correcting the events was narrowed down to just Yale, of course, Dion too, when he had the time, because the thing with Dion is he does an amazing job for JMR, of course, but he does that kind of stuff that you guys mostly don't notice, but it's the stuff that keeps the channel running, and it's
the whole business side of
awesome.
it, right?
Yeah, exactly, the business side of it.
I would love to have Dion on here and talk the business side of Marble Olympics. Like I myself am someone who's quite interested in business, and I would love that. That would be awesome to hear what goes on. What are the non-marbly things that goes on behind Marble Olympics, right? I mean, hey, if he's willing to come on, let me know. Dion, are you out there, right?
And that was a big decision to make, because I did the math back in one of our previous episodes, and that decision ultimately did cost Midnight Wisps. The Midnight Wisps one whole place in the ending results, and so these decisions do matter, and so that's kind of why I wanted to know, because it was a very important part of how it all turned out.
To answer the question finally, the decision was taken by I don't remember if Stinth was involved in that particular case, but normally it would be taken by Stinth, because I know him for a long time and I know that he's trustworthy. I'm not saying that the rest of the JMRC is not trustworthy. It's just
Ooh, exposed.
it's just that were special circumstances, and we just had to choose some people who are trustworthy and who have a great attention to detail. And that decision was taken by Yele, him, and me. And I guess you're questioning yourself if it was staged or not. So if it happened naturally.
Yeah, people do ask that. Actually, that's a great question for the listeners more, because I'm pretty sure. I think you told me like they're not really staged, but I'll definitely make that clear, like on whether it's staged or not, because there's a bunch of different things. Like there was something all the way back in 2016 someone was referring to with Team Primary and something that happened with them, and other things. Obviously, we know like the streaker across the field is staged, because that doesn't just happen. You have to do that, and all the security guards and stuff. But that, I feel like that's a good stage. It's a funny stage. But like about those things.
Like
in
false
the Marble
starts
Olympics,
and
like false, like the Rangers getting stuck or something. You know what I'm saying? Like, I guess definitely speak to that real quick if you could.
Yeah, for sure. Well, the short answer is that all of that is definitely not staged, because I don't even know how we would stage something like that without
It can always be harder to stage
making
them than
it
just let them happen.
Yeah, without making it absolutely obvious.
The only way to do it is like rerun the event over and over until you get the result that you
Yeah.
want.
Now,
Yeah,
actually,
we don't have the
I
time for
really-
that. That's the thing.
That's ridiculous.
Oh, so
Yeah.
you guys never in the 4 years. I just really want to know. Never in the 4 years. Have you ever guys like reran an event to get a certain result?
I can't speak for all the 4 years because I'm on JMR just since 2018, but I can assure you that for that time, those kind of things didn't happen.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they probably didn't happen beforehand either, which is
I
good.
mean-
It's good to know that.
I mean, it's public knowledge that we do rerun events if there are some complications like track
Of course,
failures
that
or
makes
something.
sense, right?
Right.
But because of all those happenings in this season, we tried to define certain guidelines for what exactly a track failure is, what exactly a false start is in our rule book. And I'm pretty happy with the outcome, and we're still thinking about whether to actually fully release that rule book to the public, or
Oh, I remember that when they came out and then they kind of got zapped away.
yeah. And people accused us of you just made that up to
Appease
to
the fans.
cover the decision of excluding the Rangers in the funnel race, but it really wasn't like that. We had the rules like forever. We had certain guidelines for when to actually rerun an event or when to not do it, what a false start is. We have cases. We have what is it called? Like
A precedent?
sorry. Now we had cases that presidential, is that a word?
Presidential? Yeah, that's a word.
Yeah, that's a word. we'll find it. Someone comment the right word.
Yeah, like cases that happened before, and we use them to
Preceding.
Preceding events. You mean.
preceding.
previous.
Okay, preceding cases.
got
I'm
it.
so sorry. It's so late here. I'm
No,
talking.
dude, no, don't. Your English is good, man. Like you do
Yeah.
a great job.
Well, we
Even I
have
lose
those
words
cases,
sometimes,
and
believe it or not.
judging by those, we were making the rule book, and it really was just the first time that we wrote that down. But we're not changing our judgment according to different cases. It's always the same.
Which is good.
We never stage any false starts. They happen because our equipment is not perfect, and sometimes a marble just gets stuck. That just happens.
And that sorry, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
I'll say
that's
it.
the point. Things like that just happen naturally.
And
There's no way to fully prevent them, even with perfect equipment.
Right.
Yeah, and that's something I love. I just love that about the Marble Olympics. And I don't understand necessarily why people get all upset and they start complaining, oh, that why did you not restart for the O'Rangers? Why is that false start or whatever? Like, I don't get that because it's pretty clear that could not have been staged. You dumped a bunch of marbles down a starting pathway, and you saw how one of them just got pushed by other marbles and didn't end up making it. That you could say, and especially if you were in the marble sports world as you're supposed to be, you could say that was the marble's fault. Like no one touched it. No one touched it. No one even touched them at the start.
I
You guys do a great
remember. I remember
time.
doing
Yep.
screenshots there.
But like,
Yeah,
that's the thing. So, sorry, as someone who's been here since the Algodo days, there have been people who have been claiming for years that are always like, "Oh, my marble wasn't winning because you rigged it or you made it." So like, and with Algodo, like since you can edit properties like with physics and stuff, people like it's easier to cheat in Algodo than real life. But so people have always claimed forever is if things don't go their way, there'll be a few people who will always say, "Oh, you rigged it," and so. That's never going to stop, regardless of how much. Sorry, excuse me. How much you prove trying to show sports.
It. Like take like a simple event like track. Let's say you're a fan of a certain track star, and that track star, like falls over, like in like lane when they start. I mean, you're not going to say, oh, the track person running in that event is not going to say, oh, the track was faulty, we have to restart. No, it's their fault for falling over. Like, just in the similar way, it's O'Rangers' fault. In technicality, yes, it is O'Rangers' team fault for not making it into the funnel. No one touched it. Just other marbles. No one else touched it. And like if you take other things like the Midnight Wisps knocking their thing in the Raspberry Racers thing, if you take whatever the team primary interference was that someone said it, I can't remember. Those things just happen. And actually, I really like that you guys will like disqualify and stuff at those kind of things because you're taking the right approach and a good advantage of the chaos and the natural mistakes that happen sometimes in a marble race. You know, the O'Rangers didn't go, well, they get disqualified, and that's a good way to capitalize on those situations. So I don't understand why people get upset. Obviously people get upset about their own team because like they wouldn't like that their own team suffered the whole time, that the O'Rangers didn't even get to the funnel. But like that's just the way it happens. That's just the way the marbles work. That's the whole chaos of the whole thing, something we come back to before. And I mean, it's all about just the natural happenings and capitalizing on those. That's why I love that. I love that you didn't restart for the O'Rangers. I really do. I love that you didn't restart and they were disqualified or they didn't, whatever happened to them. They just didn't get to place because they didn't make it. That was, I think, a good move, even though O'Rangers fans would probably go no instead of oh on that one. Yeah.
So we're nearly out of time here, so I do want to have at least one more subject before we end, because I don't want this whole thing to be just about fan interaction randomness. So let's talk about the logo.
It's a good topic.
It is a good topic, yeah.
But yes.
Let's bring up the logos.
Yes, the logos. We do know, of course, who made them and how are they made. But I want to just ask you, Melikus, to talk a little bit. What do you think about them? What do you think about these logos compared to the old ones? And do you like them, or do you want them? There's probably one fix I would think about, but I want to hear what you have to say first.
Brendan, you cut out so bad there. Could you repeat that, please?
And I'm gonna leave this all in too because I don't feel like editing. But yes, I'm gonna try again. Here we go. I just want to know, Melikus, what do you think about these new logos? And you love them. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, in short, I absolutely love them. It might be personal preference here, of course. But yeah, I think these logos are the very best that we ever had for the Marble Olympics. I really like Pim's, so the logos we had before, Pim's logos too, and it's very unfortunate that he couldn't manage to finish the rest of the teams for the showdown, which was a reason why we changed the logos. but yeah, you have to understand, when talking about the new logos, I feel so bad for Pim, because I really don't want to disrespect his work. I have a really high respect for his work, and the whole JMRC does, because we encouraged him, we supported him, and the logos got a lot of backlash because it was something new. It wasn't something you'd expect for maybe a sporting team, and Pim said that was the intention behind it. Now the new designs, the designer is called Tim, so slight difference here.
Yeah.
He uses a totally different approach. These logos look like football clubs.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And they have so many attention to detail, and I don't know, they're so simple. They have that pattern that they follow, and it's just beautiful how everything combines up to I don't know, to one thing. And if you see a logo, or if you see one of those logos, you'll immediately know, okay, that's from the Marble Olympics. And alone that small JMR in every of those single logos, I think that adds so much, and it's just beautiful how it all plays out, and the design process behind it is just incredible. Just for your info, Tim is planning on releasing his thoughts behind the logos for every single logo.
That's
on
awesome.
Reddit periodically. So he will make some posts about like, I don't know, 8 logos in a bunch, and then some time will pass and the next one will come out. So I think he did that with the logos too. He made those bunches, right?
Yeah.
I think he started with 8 teams or something, and then he made the next ones after some time, and just like that he will share his thoughts on the designs, and I think that's just incredible.
Something that like I talked about off of this show with both Marble Guy and also with Hershey is that, like, while I do love the look of the logos, they are all so similar in shape that they kind of just blend together.
That was the point I was gonna
And
throw in
yeah.
too.
And like part of it was because like they were designed by Konku to be logos for jerseys and not necessarily logos that like for a whole team. And like something I thought, like, it mentioned in the Facebook post, like there's still room for improvements. And like, so like one idea I had is like for the Savage Speeders logo is my favorite one for the Savage Speeders thus far. But one thing that can make it look even better is like, so the speedometer circle, like turning that into a fireball speedometer and maybe having their name underneath in a flame kind of way or something like that. Maybe not would be like a way to make it look more unique compared to the others. Right. And it's like the logos, I think they look great for like, they'd be great. They're great for they're great the way they are for like shirts and merchandise. I definitely agree with that, but maybe they could use some improvements or additions that would make them look better for full-blown team representing logos.
And I just want to pipe in quick on this. Really, for me, it's this. Take all those logos, and this will work for about 50% of them at least. Take all those logos and remove the circle border. Just do it. Just take the circle border out. I mean, I actually can pull these up right now and like actually then just talk about it. Like for me, I mean, like if you take the Green Ducks logo where you have the bird, just take the circle border out on it. That's like on all of them, and just have the duck and the GD, and that's perfect. Or like the Balls of Chaos one, take the circle border out. You have that gear and the chaos thing, perfect. Okay, and I know some of them only work with the circle, like the Midnight Wisp has that crescent moon and stuff.
Right.
But even just like, you know, but like another great point, and sorry if you're not looking at these logos to any of these listeners, but take the primary logo, take the circle away, and leave that kind of little cross section in the middle of the 3 colors and stuff, and it's perfect. For the Pinkies, this is perfect. Take the circle border away from it, and you have that hand with the pinky. Like the problem I see with these logos is not the design behind them. They did a great job of designing these logos. I love every one of them, except I think the Mellow Yoga logo is not mellow enough. But that's a discussion for another time.
Kaku defended the design. I think I agree with his choices, and so I'm fine with it.
But he did pretty well on that one as well. But it's just they're trapped in the circle. Some of them, if they were just taken out of the circle, they keep the same meaning, and they're also a great logo. It just doesn't seem like they're they're similar to all the other logos. And I'd say maybe think about that. Some of them, like a lot of them are like, if you take the circle away, they look kind of weird. But maybe with a little bit of adjustment, you actually could have real good logos that all actually have a different like shape to them, a different variant to them. And then instead of just these icons, you have the logos. And I mean, even as they are, they're amazing. I'm not going to knock them. I'm just saying, if we're talking about improvement, it's definitely that, don't trap them like that. Maybe. And I don't know. Maybe what do you think about that, Melikus?
Yeah, I can follow you definitely. But the question is, do we really want to remove that circle? Because as of now, that circle is in every single logo, and you must not forget that we're talking about marbles, and marbles are round too. And I think it's just brilliant to have round logos for marble teams. I don't know, it just seems brilliant to me. And I don't know, I'm looking at the logos right now, and I think for some teams it might work to take the circle away, but
like you're right, is there's that aspect of trying to keep that round theme to it. Maybe you want to keep the circle right, and
I think it's the cross team connection that shows, okay, that's one league where one marbles, or however you want to call it, we are one. That's the connection between all the teams, that circle, and I think that's just beautiful. And honestly, I wouldn't want to remove that. And well, I can assure you that's not going to happen. But yeah, I talked to Tim about it, and we agreed that we will consider minor improvements, but we are not like going to redo Mellow Yellow or something, because we really like the logos as they are.
And I think overall they're absolutely amazing. So I'm not going to knock them either.
And I agree, like the designs are good. This is like I wasn't one opting for like removing the circle. I was like saying like these were concerns that like I at first I also like the whole like they're all marbles, and so it's like a circle to represent marbles, like, but then like as like, the more like Hershey like, talked to me about it, it's like they look kind of more like a badge or something like that. And it's like because they're so similar, are not as distinct, and so maybe not removing the circle, but like adding more to it, like again like with the whole like my idea for like the fireball around the speedometer for the side speeders, or something to just make them more distinct. Like I know that like the logos are great regardless, and I'll like them however they're gonna be, but I think they could be better if they were more distinct from one another, and that's just my personal opinion. The community can give their own opinion, of course, like because it's all about what the whole collective community wants. It's not just about what me and Brendan want, or Brendan and I.
Yeah,
so like
either way.
And so like this is definitely something that's like that can't be fixed. Especially it probably couldn't be fixed for Marvel Showdown either, regardless, because it's coming so soon that I don't think there'll be enough time to come up with design additions, or if some fans wanted it, complete redesigns of logos, which I do not think needs to be done at all personally. But like there is so much that like I think it needs like fan input, I guess, is what like really like, get their opinion on like, do you think that these should be improved, or like something like that.
Yeah, I agree, and we'll have to see how that turns out with these logos. I think even if they were left as they were now, they are still quite good. But yes, those are definitely good points to consider. We are gonna have to start to wrap it up here, and like actually wrap it up, because we are even in part 2 over an hour. We cannot refrain from talking marbles. I'm telling you what, this has been awesome. And Mel, dude, it's been awesome to have you on, man. It's been amazing.
Yeah, it's been great to get some of these questions that we had since the beginning to finally cleared up and stuff. I've actually, this has been probably one of the most productive episodes, I'd say.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Of course, it was a pleasure. And I just got an idea for wrapping it up. I'd say, I'm sure both of you still have some questions left, don't you? Like, one question that's burning inside of you and that you have to get
My
answered.
question is, how am I gonna edit all this?
Yeah.
No, I mean, we may have to save a lot of this stuff for the. I mean, if hopefully you'll be okay with coming on another episode because we can.
Yeah, of course. I hope to be back soon.
Yeah, you will be if you're okay with that because we have a lot to talk about. But with lots of content here, we are gonna have to wrap up. I always hate to quench marble talk, but hey. There'll be other times. We're not gonna. Marble Sports isn't going nowhere except for up.
I think you misunderstood me. I was offering you a opportunity to answer
Yeah, just
some
one more question, basically.
insider question.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. I should take this opportunity. But do I have another really burning question?
Of course you have. You just have to discover it. Well, if not, we can wrap it up here. I'm fine with that too.
I think
don't know.
I think like my biggest burning questions like have been answered. Like,
are we getting on JMR?
like I think we're a little bit ways away from that at the moment. But I mean that I think I'd be interested in being part of JMR maybe someday. I don't know if that would.
No, is this podcast getting there? JMRC, we'll have to see.
Who knows? Maybe one day. It all depends. Like just as he said, like it's all about just being involved and stuff. And so, the more we contribute, the more
exactly.
I guess the more likely it can be.
Yes, everyone contribute. It's good to see all these Marble fans. Big shout out, by the way, to Killian Bladestar for pretty much staying in the whole live time of the podcast. So shout out to him as we wrap it up. So thank you. Yeah, he's still typing in there.
He's been here for a while.
Yeah, he likes marbles.
Yep.
I don't know what we're gonna do for the outro. To be honest, like usual, I don't know. I might throw in another outro song. Pick one.
If depending, if we're doing like so, since we don't know what's gonna happen, if we ended up doing like a special mid part one ender kind of thing that like bridges the gap between the two, and like then like the ending for this episode, the ending for part two will be Project Evolution by Denrain 47. If we did that for the end of part one instead, we don't know what we're gonna do for this one. So I guess we can pick another song to do.
Yeah, pick another song. I don't even know, man. We're trying some new things out, so we'll see how it goes. And if I don't name the artist to every single song every time, well, you know what? It's not the end of the world. And if it is, well, I don't know.